Hi, Sagittarius Sun and Rising. Welcome to your May 2022 Astro Update. It's Rena here. As somebody with my Sun in Sagittarius as well, I'm always extra invested in the Sagittarius horoscopes or tarot readings. It's kind of like an insider because since it's my own sign. So anyway, I'm very excited because I wasn't really paying attention to it for Sag specifically because I happen to have Taurus rising. So I'm always looking at my natal chart. And if you're listening for your sun in Sag, your rising sign is very important because it is what creates your natal chart. Your time of birth lets you know what your rising sign is, and that's the cusp of the first house. So if you've never tried to find out what your rising sign is, or you're looked at your natal chart, there are free chart generators if you have your exact time of birth. You must have your exact time of birth. Don't, kind of like try to make it round it off to a certain hour, because it really is, it can change the information very easily. And I use astro.com, and that's a free service. Or you can get a reading from me, and I have double readings for both the chart analysis and the aspects that are coming up in the next year. That's called my deep dive reading, and that one is a discounted price. But anyway, this is more of a general reading, but it will still be relevant to you to some degree, because some things that aren't happening now may happen for you later, or maybe they've just happened and you will understand what's going on there. So in May, obviously the sun is in Taurus for the first few weeks of the month, as it is every year. And this is Taurus for Sag is the sixth house. So there's always in May a kind of Virgo undertone where you might feel like you're trying to get things done on a practical level. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be celebrating my 7th anniversary on YouTube on May 10th. And that's when I began my service to others on this platform. And that is what the sixth house is all about. So for you, let's take first things first. Venus is going into Aries on the 2nd of the month. And this is great because Aries is another fire sign. So it trines Sag. And it is the fire sign that is ahead of us. So that would be the 5th house of love and creativity. So that is really, really good, because that is an area that is all about pleasure, things that you do for fun, for hobbies, and you might even make some money off of a hobby or your artistic creation or creations. And speaking of which, Jupiter goes into Aries on the 10th. And on the same day, this is when Mercury retrogrades at 4 degrees of Gemini. It's very interesting that this is happening on the same day. So Jupiter goes into that 5th house to join Venus. These are the two benefic planets. And then we have Mercury retrograding on the 10th. And for Sag, that is the 7th house, which is the house of committed partnership, but it's also the house of public relations. So sometimes I wonder, okay, what exactly does public relations mean? Because I usually think of, being a spokesmodel for somebody. But actually, it's supposed to be about promoting yourself. And so if you have Mercury retrograding here, you may change the way that you market yourself. And a lot of Sages, I think they would kind of be a little bit put off by that phrase, market oneself. because Sag likes to be very authentic and not have some kind of a facade or an image or something like that. And if you look at it at a deeper level, it can be that if you're trying, if you don't know people in the public and you want to tell them what you're all about, you have to be able to do so in a way that is very brief, that is concise, that really gets to the essence of who you are. And sometimes we don't do that when we are trying to sell our wares, so to speak. And of course, some of you might be thinking, well, I work a 9-to-5 job, so I don't have any need for public relations. But really, this can run the gamut. It doesn't have to be just somebody who is in the public eye or they have their own business and they're trying to promote themselves. It can even be, seventh house can be your partnerships. So when you have a Mercury retrograde in the seventh house, you have to watch out for any kind of misunderstanding between you and another person. Not just your significant other, but it could be like a friend. The 11th house are friendships, but it's kind of like the collective versus the one-on-one relationships. That's more of the seventh house. And sometimes there are misunderstandings that develop. And it's not necessarily that this is going to be right now that you're going to have a misunderstanding. This may have already been building. So, for instance, if you have a friend that you haven't seen for a long time, and maybe you've tried to call him or her and didn't get a response, and you were kind of like, oh, they're probably just busy and stuff like that. And then you hear that this person is angry at you and they've been kind of avoiding you. That might be a time when you, or it would be more like something else adds to that and it becomes like kind of a real misunderstanding. Maybe it's just been like one thing, like a little resentment after the other, and then it's a full-blown misunderstanding. Well, all it takes is communication, good communication skills to be able to do that. Well, that's the thing. Sometimes it's hard to convey our feelings in a way that other people can understand, either because they're being emotional or we're being obtuse. It doesn't, just because we're trying to explain something doesn't mean that we're doing a good job of it, right? So this can also be something of a legal matter. Be careful if you do have documents to sign in the second week of the month and going into June, that you are reading the fine print, because Mercury can be paperwork and there could be something that is not right. It could be a legal matter. On the 16th, there's a lunar eclipse at 25 degrees of Scorpio. Well, that's the 12th house for Sag. This is something that some people may feel a little bit of trepidation about, because they're like, oh my gosh, the 12th house. I know that the 12th house is supposed to be so scary. It's like this closet that has all these cobwebs in it. What should I do? Well, the 12th house is the house of self-undoing. So it can be the area where you are finding yourself not being able to get, having these self-defeating patterns is what I meant to say. And when there's a lunar eclipse there, something can be cleared out. And this is also the house of karma. So you might end your karma in some way. And it becomes this resounding finish to something, and you're able to put it behind you. But for some people, if they're trying to do new things in their life, but they still have unfinished business, that's going to cause problems. This may be a very psychic experience, because this is a very powerful full moon. That was a train going by and I had to pause it. It's powerful in the sense that in the 12th house, this is the house of the dream state, and the full moon is all about those kind of psychic visions and things like that. So it can shed light on certain things that have been kind of kept in the dark and need to come out. So it can be very liberating in that sense. And like I said, then you're starting a whole new cycle. On the 20th, the sun goes into Gemini, the opposite sign of Sag, in that 7th house. And that might be a time of rekindling. Even if you're in a happy relationship, if you've been doing your own things, and now you can maybe do some stuff with your partner. Mercury goes back into Taurus. Did I say, yeah, I said the Mercury retrograde. Mercury goes back into Taurus on the 22nd of the month. So it goes from that 7th house to the 6th house. And then it's really looking at I would say, especially like routines that you have. Do they work for you? Are you able to be productive in your life? Do you feel like there are some things that are leeching your energy in some way? Maybe because they are, you could do things better. You could arrange your time, manage your time in a better way. On the 24th, and also if you're having some kind of negotiation on the job, this is kind of that back and forth, because the 7th house can be, mediator, things like that. And then it's going back in this house of work. On the 24th, Mars goes into Aries, its own sign, the sign that it rules. So Mars is going to be in that 5th house with those other two planets. A very creative month, but fun. People talk about the sun in the 5th house, but, when you get Venus there, when you get Jupiter there, when you get Mars there, it's really very pleasant and lucky and active with Mars for sure. Just if you have a creative project, you may just be going to town on it. On the 28th, Venus goes into Taurus. So Venus has had her fun in that 5th house, and now she is all about the 6th house. But this, like if you have stayed off the job because of negotiations and stuff, and then you go back, there's going to be a more harmonious environment. You may get a raise. Maybe these are salary negotiations, and you're kind of taking time off while they are happening, or just you quit because you didn't get what you wanted, and then they take you back or something like that. Venus in the 6th house can be that your office gets decorated. You can fall in love on the job or through the work that you're doing in some way. I always call this the Vitamix transit, because Venus can be luxury items, but this is health. So what would somebody buy that is a big ticket item but good for health? Well, maybe a Vitamix. On the 30th, we have the new moon at 9 degrees of Gemini in that 7th house, but it's tentative because there's a Mercury retrograde. Mercury hasn't even gone back into Gemini yet, because it hasn't gone direct. It won't go direct for a few more days after this. So anything that has been a falling out or some kind of a legal affair, legal matter, anything to do with issues surrounding you having to negotiate something or some partnership matters. These kinds of things you will see the settling of these matters probably towards the middle or latter part of June, because Mercury has to come out of its shadow after it goes direct again. And there's just some things that have to be resolved. So don't feel that anything that is kind of up in the air is going to be up in the air forever. It's not. It's just that we're in this period of time where we're having this retrograde, and when the end of June rolls around, we're going to have at least 6 weeks of retrograde free periods of the personal planets. So it'll feel more forward moving as June comes to an end, as we get into July. Okay, Sats, that's what I have for you. I hope that you resonated with this. If you would like a private reading, the one thing I want to tell you is that love can come into your life too. I really didn't emphasize that. I was talking more about creative matters, but love can come into your life with these planets like Venus and Jupiter in the 5th house. That's what I have for you. If you'd like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.